small flying alien bug suddenly appeared in front of Kafka, buzzing around. Before Kafka could even process seeing the bug, it forced its way into his mouth. In the very next moment, changes began occurring inside Kafka, turning him into a monster of a new species. In fact, these monsters were spread all across the world, and they were called kaiju. To fight them, highly advanced, tech-equipped soldiers emerged. Using their top-tier equipment and superhuman strength, they eliminated these kaiju. After the monsters were defeated, a special cleanup squad arrived to dispose of the kaiju remains and debris. The story's hero, Kafka, was actually a member of this very cleanup squad. However, the kaiju killed by the 3rd Division team were often extremely gruesome. Cleanup team members sometimes failed to recognize the dangerous body parts of the kaiju, and when those parts burst or exploded, workers got injured. Some kaiju were so massive that their remains spread across several kilometers. Whenever someone in the cleanup team got hurt, Commander would order Kafka to take their place. Kafka was assigned to clean the most disgusting sections, parts so horrific that they made it impossible to eat dinner afterward. The work was extremely tough. The stench from the remains made Kafka fall ill at night. Then one day, he saw news about the 3rd Division team on TV. In the news was a beautiful girl named Mina, the captain of the team, and Kafka's childhood love. As kids, the two had promised each other that they would grow up and fight kaiju together. But 10 years later, Mina had become the captain of the 3rd Division, while Kafka was still doing cleanup work. The next day, a new member joined the cleanup team named Reno. His dream was to become a member of the Defense Force someday. Seeing that Kafka had given up on that same dream, Reno looked down on him and left without saying a word. Kafka felt irritated by his attitude, but continued with his work. Reno was assigned the most nauseating pile of remains, enough to make anyone vomit. Kafka wanted to mock him for it, but then his own name was called too. After 2 straight days of non-stop work, Kafka was exhausted, but hearing praise from the captain filled him with renewed energy, and he got back to work. During lunch, Reno couldn't eat because his clothes were soaked in the foul-smelling kaiju debris. Seeing this, Kafka felt a bit of amusement, but then he handed Reno a packet of vitamin juice and said, "You won't be able to work all day without eating anything." Later, to protect Reno from the stench, Kafka gave him rubber plugs for his nose. But Reno misunderstood the kindness and refused to put them in his nose. Still, Kafka wasn't someone who gave up easily. In this way, the two of them finished the day's work together. As they were leaving, Reno thanked Kafka because his help had gotten him through his first day. In return, Reno gave him good news. The age limit for joining the Defense Force had been raised to 33, so now Kafka could still apply. Reno didn't want to see Kafka looking hopeless. While Kafka was thanking him, suddenly a kaiju attacked out of nowhere. Kafka managed to save Reno's life just in time, but the danger wasn't over yet. He told Reno to run to a safe place and call the Defense Force. Reno realized staying would only be a burden, so he left feeling ashamed. Kafka tried to fight the kaiju using a pipe, but it flung him away with one blow. His life was spared, but he was badly injured. He no longer had the strength to run. Just as the kaiju was about to devour him, Reno suddenly returned and attacked the monster with a signboard. But such a small hit did nothing to the kaiju. As it was about to swallow Reno, Kafka shouted loudly. At that exact moment, the 3rd Division team arrived on time. Mina used her powers to tear the kaiju to pieces. Seeing Mina leave, Kafka didn't even have the courage to call out to her or reveal himself. That night, Kafka was very depressed, but Reno's encouragement gave him courage again. Then suddenly, a small kaiju bug appeared right in front of his eyes. Seeing it, Kafka froze. Before he could react, it was too late. The bug forced its way into his mouth again, and immediate changes began in his body. Hearing strange noises, Reno woke up. When he pulled back the curtain, he saw a human-like kaiju sitting there. Reno's eyes nearly popped out in shock. When Kafka looked at his face in the mirror, both of them were stunned. At that moment, an old man saw him, got terrified, and immediately called the police. Kafka never imagined that his appearance would become so terrifying that it would cause an old man to faint in fear just by looking at him. Even more surprising was that after turning into a monster, Kafka's physical abilities far surpassed those of ordinary humans. The walls shattered just from his touch. To escape before the security team arrived, Kafka planned to jump out the window, but the moment he touched it, the window shattered into pieces. As soon as the two of them heard people's screams, without thinking, they jumped out one window after another. Though their jumping styles were different, Kafka began to cry because of his transformed body. Since the body's change was completely beyond his control, even though his consciousness remained, the body performed strange actions. In a moment of lost control, he accidentally swallowed a rat hole. But Kafka managed to regain control over his body again. Crying, Kafka ran after Reno. Confused, Reno asked, "How can you be so weird?" Kafka never thought that after living 32 years, he would feel this much embarrassment in front of Reno. How could he possibly join the Defense Force now? In response, Reno said that in his current form, he would probably be killed before even reaching the Defense Force's door. However, as the two continued to flee, Kafka suddenly sensed kaiju activity nearby, and the security team receiving the signal had split into two groups. At that moment, Kafka wanted to help, but Reno told him they should take advantage of the opportunity to escape. The place where the kaiju appeared was already in ruins. A woman was trapped under rubble, unable to move, and a little girl next to her was crying. The monster was approaching to devour the little girl, but suddenly Kafka punched the kaiju and sent it flying 100 meters away. Kafka was shocked at how immense his strength had become. Then he went to the little girl and tried to comfort her. He attempted to give her a smile to cheer her up, but the little girl was so terrified by the sight that she nearly died from fear. Thankfully, Reno arrived just in time to warn her. By then, the woman had already fainted from the pain, and the kaiju had returned. Kafka quickly told Reno to hide so he could unleash his full power with a punch. He concentrated all his strength into the blow and turned the kaiju into mincemeat. After the kaiju was defeated, Kafka calmed down. He wanted to send the mother and daughter to the hospital, but seeing the little girl's frightened expression, he left them with Reno and said the defense force would arrive soon, so there was no need to be afraid. Just as Kafka turned to leave, the little girl grabbed him from behind. A simple thank you reminded Kafka of the promise he had made with his childhood love. He pictured the two of them fighting kaiju together. However, once Kafka calmed down, his body began returning to normal. By the time the defense force arrived, only one eye of the kaiju remained at the scene. Seeing the little girl safe, Mina learned about the incident. The little girl insisted that they not kill the good monster who had saved her mother. Hearing this, Mina was stunned. The next day, TV news reported on the kaiju in the hospital and officially designated it as Kaiju No. 8 in sequence. At the same time, Reno, who had come to work, received his acceptance notice from the defense force along with a report about Kafka. Kafka was now eating breakfast while dealing with kaiju. He could now control his body's transformations. As long as he stayed calm, his body would remain normal. After that, the two of them headed to the defense force headquarters for the next test. But upon arriving, they encountered a cocky girl with yellow hair named Shinomiya. She pointed at their van and said they had taken her parking spot, even though there were many empty spaces around. She insisted that spot number 55 was her lucky number. Kafka was furious and wanted to teach her a lesson, but Shinomiya immediately stripped off her outer clothes to reveal her combat suit underneath. With just a little effort, she lifted the van with one hand and tossed it aside. Shinomiya had also come to join the defense force. In their very first meeting, she detected a kaiju scent on Kafka. She could smell something somewhat like a kaiju coming from him. Kafka immediately fell silent, and while Reno was trying to defend him, Kafka quietly lifted the car. Seeing such strength from Kafka, Shinomiya was extremely shocked. She thought Kafka was also wearing a combat suit like her, but Kafka offered no explanation. After the girl left, Reno became worried because he knew very well that when Kafka lifted the car, he had used his kaiju power. Although Shinomiya didn't notice, this was the defense force headquarters. If anyone found out, Kafka would be killed on the spot. After this drama ended, the training officially began. The training was divided into two parts. The first part was the physical test, but since he was over 30 years old, Kafka couldn't compete with these young candidates in terms of pure physical strength. The results were as expected. Among the candidates, Kafka ranked 6th from the bottom. Seeing this ranking, Shinomiya, who was in 5th place, started laughing at Kafka. After she left, Reno came to console Kafka, saying it wasn't because of his age. These candidates were extremely talented. They were all graduates from prestigious universities with top-class degrees. The most talented among them was Shinomiya herself. She had graduated from a top university at just 16 years old and was considered the most brilliant girl in history. Comparing himself to her was only natural for Kafka. Now Kafka truly understood how exceptional Shinomiya was. Reno reassured him, explaining that the next test involved dealing with kaiju corpses, which was exactly Kafka's area of expertise. That's precisely why Reno had chosen to work at a cleanup company. Hearing this, Kafka became excited. But when the examiner announced the subject of the exam, both of them were stunned. It wasn't about dissecting kaiju corpses at all. It was about fighting live kaiju. Seeing Kafka fall to the ground, Shinomiya burst out laughing again. Kafka got angry at Reno. Poor Reno was innocent too. He had no idea the exam topic would suddenly change. Fortunately, they weren't sent to fight the monsters empty-handed. The examiner provided them with Defense Force combat suits. These suits were made from kaiju muscle fibers. They automatically adjusted to the wearer's body shape and also amplified physical strength. However, the amount of power each person could draw from the suit depended on their individual capability. In the test, someone with 8% capability could only utilize 8% of the suit's power. Most of the new candidates ranged between 10% and 20%, which was considered very good for rookies. Normally, it's a big deal if someone increases beyond 10% in a single year, but Shinomiya's figure was 46%, which was completely at the level of a leader. While the examiner was pleased with the quality of this year's candidates, he burst into loud laughter when he saw Kafka's result, 0%. Kafka tried his hardest, but it stayed at 0%. Still, the examiner allowed him to proceed to the next test. The objective of this exam was to defeat the main kaiju in the field, and every candidate was monitored by a drone. If anyone's life was in danger, the examiner would immediately activate the suit's safety shield. But once the safety shield was deployed, that person was disqualified. The exam officially began. All candidates rushed out carrying special weapons designed for fighting kaiju. These weapons operated on the same principle as the combat suits. Their power depended on the user's compatibility percentage. Shinomiya, with her 46% compatibility, wielded weapons of terrifying power. On the other hand, Kafka, with 0%, couldn't even properly lift a rifle without the suit's assistance. At that moment, the examiner announced over the headsets that in this final test, Captain Mina would also be participating in the scoring. Hearing Mina's name, Kafka instantly became alert. After all, at 33 years old, this was his last chance to stand beside her. After calming down, Kafka realized the purpose of the drones. If scoring were based purely on combat performance, the examiners could simply use sensors to count points. The need for drone surveillance meant this test was actually evaluating adaptability. So Kafka threw away the rifle, pulled out a small pistol instead, and charged into the battlefield. Soon he found a squad surrounding a kaiju, but their attacks were having almost no effect. With one glance, Kafka recognized the monster. He had dealt with its corpse before, so its weakness was crystal clear. He pulled out a stun grenade and threw it at the kaiju. In reality, this particular kaiju had evolved without eyes and relied heavily on hearing. Disrupting its hearing would effectively blind it completely. Then Kafka shouted to everyone to aim at its abdomen. That was its weakest spot. Although the others didn't understand why they should trust Kafka, seeing the monster recover, they had no choice but to follow his advice. Unexpectedly, Kafka was right. This experience greatly boosted Kafka's confidence. He had years of experience understanding kaiju. He knew the weaknesses of almost any monster he encountered. While Kafka and the others were searching for the next kaiju, Kafka was suddenly attacked. But in that instant, a powerful strike severed the kaiju's head. It was Shinomiya. Seeing her so celebrated made Kafka quite frustrated, but at that moment, his body had multiple fractures and he couldn't even stand. The examiner, seeing his condition, advised him to withdraw. His internal organs might be damaged. Continuing could cost him his life, but having come this far, Kafka wasn't going to give up so easily. Shinomiya had single-handedly killed all the kaiju, but she never expected that the exam, which should have ended, would suddenly change. An oddly shaped humanoid kaiju appeared behind her. In the blink of an eye, it attacked Shinomiya. Fortunately, in that critical moment, she concentrated her shield in one spot, barely saving her heart. However, the danger was far from over. The humanoid kaiju had no intention of letting the girl go. It first revived the kaiju that had already been killed, then immediately raised its hand and began destroying Sonomiya's limbs. Sonomiya was completely incapacitated in this moment. For the talented girl, only death seemed to await. But Sonomiya never imagined that the person who would save her at this crucial time would be none other than Kafka, the very one she had previously looked down upon. Kafka transformed into his kaiju form right in front of Sonomiya. At the same time, the energy level measured by the Defense Force headquarters astonishingly reached 9.8. This meant he possessed the power to destroy an entire country. After defeating all the remaining kaiju around Sonomiya, he immediately targeted the smaller kaiju. The girl, who was a prodigy with liberation combat power, did not lack fighting ability. She first created a grenade and detonated it on the kaiju's head, then charged swiftly toward the enemy. While the smoke still lingered, she leaped from a height straight onto the monster's mouth. What was an utterly terrifying kaiju for the other examinees, she eliminated in just 2.5 minutes. Soon after, the announcement of the exam's conclusion echoed across the entire field. On the other side, Kafka was also satisfied. Earlier, after his bones had broken, he had barely managed to stand. He had thought with great difficulty of a way to continue the exam, but they didn't know that the remaining kaiju hadn't yet been found, and the exam had already ended. At the same time, the examiners were very pleased with Sonomiya's performance. Originally, they had expected around 30 casualties, but the result was that everyone survived. The number of injured was also kept to a minimum. All of this was thanks to Sonomiya's presence, but no one expected that Kaiju number 9 would appear at this time. Not only did it inflict serious injuries on Sonomiya, but it also beat her badly. The defeated kaiju strangely came back to life. Screams from Sonomiya were immediately heard at the base, along with news of the remaining kaiju's revival. But this wasn't the most serious thing. They detected the revived kaiju, whose energy level had reached 6.4. This was beyond the capabilities of the candidates. At the scene, only Captain Mina and Vice Captain Soshiro had the ability to handle a kaiju of this level alone. They immediately ordered the candidates to evacuate and then rush toward Sonomiya's position. At this time, Sonomiya's limbs had been pierced through, but strangely, the humanoid kaiju hadn't killed Sonomiya directly. It had left the area first. This gave Sonomiya a chance. She forcibly used the muscles in her suit to heal her wounds and intended to stop the main kaiju alone, but she was seriously injured once again. At this moment, memories of of the past surfaced in Sonomiya's mind. In her childhood, she was a prodigious child, but no matter how many achievements she accomplished, her father never praised her. In her father's eyes, her accomplishments were only natural. Upon success, she should simply move on to the next goal. Sonomiya continued to exploit her abilities. As long as even one hand could move, she never thought of giving up the fight. But when she stood up again, she found she couldn't lift her weapons. Looking down, she realized her arms were twisted. At the same moment, legs sprouted from the kaiju's head, the very weapon limbs that the defense force had previously severed. It could continuously compress energy through its legs. When Mina and Hoshina received this news, they still hadn't reached the exam site, let alone the center of the field where Sonomiya stood alone. Sonomiya spotted the shooter's red laser beam. Waiting for death seemed like the only option left. In this critical moment, the one who saved her was the same man she had previously dismissed as insignificant. Kafka revealed his true kaiju form right in front of Sonomiya. With full power, he struck the monster in front of them and blasted it away. As Kafka concentrated his strength, the base detected an extremely high energy surge. The energy level had reached an astonishing grade. Fortunately, the explosion disrupted communications, so no one witnessed Kafka's transformation. Sonomiya was stunned watching the scene. In the very next moment, Kafka turned and rushed toward her, swiftly eliminating the monsters that had been lurking behind her. Sonomiya gradually calmed down, but the next instant she collapsed unconscious on the ground. When Mina and Hoshina arrived at the examination center, they found only the remains of the kaiju. They also received confirmation that the last 3 examinees had safely reached the base. All personnel on site had been killed. However, the site reminded Hoshina of Kaiju No. 8 from 3 months earlier. This was the beginning of Kafka's identity being exposed. 2.5 days later, Kafka was back in the hospital. He had only a broken bone, which would heal soon. The defense force treated Sonomiya using all their advanced techniques. At that moment, Mina entered the ward. She didn't speak to Kafka. She simply thanked both of them. Kafka wanted to say something, but he held back, thinking he would talk to Mina properly once he became an official member. On the other side, Sonomiya regained consciousness. When Hoshina questioned her, she concealed Kafka's kaiju identity. The culprit behind the incident, Monster No. 9, was sitting in a restroom listening to the broadcast. He thought the captain had killed the main monster. Strangely, he could form a human mouth and speak. He received a phone call urging him to come quickly. Even stranger was what happened next. When Monster No. 9 stepped out, Kafka's old cleaning crew was standing there. At this point, Kaiju No. 9 looked completely like a normal human. He joined the cleaning team as a new member. The next day, Shinomiya noticed that Kafka, the one who had saved her, given to her instead. Because of Kafka, Shinomiya ended up becoming the representative of this very ceremony. To her, the event felt like a kind of insult. She kept wondering in her mind why Kafka hadn't come. However, it wasn't that he hadn't been selected. In reality, he arrived late because he had the lowest score in the test. Originally, all the officers didn't want to include Kafka in the defense force, but Hoshina expressed his could be useful in real combat situations. Secondly, even though his own score was low, Kafka had considered helping other teams more important than his. Kafka was still kept in the team as an alternate member. For now, he would continue training with his squad. That's why, while the officer's name without permission, Kafka was punished with 100 push-ups. But after the exam, Hoshina noticed something strange. When he detected the energy of an 8th level kaiju, Kafka's life signs had disappeared. At the same time, the power output of Kafka's combat suit was extreme. Now he completes a full shooting training course in just 2 minutes 35 seconds. Along with Reno's rapid progress, the other excellent members of the same batch were not far behind. The red-haired guy, who often competes with Reno, is 20 seconds faster than him, with a power level of 20%. Besides them, there are 3 other talented. 2 are Izumo, green hair, and the former soldier Kaguragi, both at 25% power. Seeing everyone's power levels, Kafka was shocked. Shinomiya teased him by calling him 1% power guy. That evening, Kafka almost cried. After shooting training, they had to run 15 laps around the field. At that time in the bathhouse, the red-haired guy suddenly started talking about body muscles with Reno. Seeing them compete, Kafka couldn't sit still either. He stood up and showed his biceps, which burst out laughing. Kafka made the excuse of age and said, "You'll understand when you're 30. He added that he had still lost quite a bit of weight. While the 3 were having fun, former soldier Kaguragi entered. His impressive muscles stunned everyone. On the other side, in the women's bathhouse, Shinomiya met Captain Mina. Mina is slim. If you didn't know who she was, no one would think someone with such a delicate body could fight monsters alone. Even in the men's bathhouse, people were talking about Mina. They discussed why they had joined the defense force. And it turned out that most members had joined because of Mina. For example, the red-haired guy was saved by the captain too. Suddenly, everyone's eyes turned demonic, and they all grabbed him together. In this way, everyone was either training or on the path to happen. Mina's white tiger growled at Kafka the first time it saw him, but after a moment, it looked confused, probably because it had smelled the kaiju scent on Kafka. He knew that if he didn't work twice as hard, he would be kicked out of the defense force. Suddenly, a voice came from behind. It was Vice Captain Hoshina, who had spotted him. Hoshino reminded him not to overexert, it would become so powerful. This time, the opponent was a colossal 150-meter kaiju, but the defense force had only one person standing against it. When Mina saw her childhood friend watching her, even she, who always stayed cold, unknowingly unleashed her suit at full power. She wanted Kafka to realize just how strong he would need to become to stand by her side. Mina pulled the trigger, and a massive surge of energy burst out. In the blink of an eye, it pierced straight through the main kaiju's entire body. Kafka and the others witnessed this shocking scene right there on the spot. However, no one knew before the mission began that defeating the main kaiju was far more powerful than the main monster. The new recruits had been divided into various squads. The experienced squad leaders were responsible for handling the remaining kaiju in the outer areas. It seemed like the safest decision, and one that nearly cost lives in this mission. Kafka was also feeling his kaiju power stirring, but the next moment, a mushroom kaiju slammed into him and sent him flying. Even the team leader was stunned by this. In the end, the leader ordered his team, the enemy's weak point wasn't clear yet, so proceed with caution until further intel arrived. But before he could finish speaking, a laser beam shot right past the leader and instantly killed the mushroom kaiju in front of him. It was Kikoru Shinomiya just wanted to tease Reno, but Reno himself ended up killing a kaiju. Drawing on his cleanup crew experience, Reno used freezing bullets designed for military kaiju and suddenly became incredibly powerful. Izumo and the former soldier Kaguragi were also talented. They kept slaughtering kaiju non-stop on the field. Their performance shattered the confidence of the veterans, and their good looks even caught the team leader's interest. In no time, all the remaining kaiju in the area were wiped out. When Kafka received the news from headquarters, he worried. If all his comrades were stepping up, how could he fall behind? Suddenly, he remembered the team leader's words, that headquarters had no knowledge about this enemy. With that thought, Kafka immediately turned to examine the corpse of the bone-like monster, kaiju. Though his combat suit power was only at 1%, he could still tear apart this giant monster with his bare hands. Using his cleanup crew knowledge, Kafka quickly found crucial information. He immediately informed the vice captain that he had located the monster's vital spot. Weaker members could attack from the side of the neck. The vice captain promptly relayed the message to headquarters, praising Kafka for his major contribution. Kafka was thrilled. He wanted to remove the reproductive organs from all the corpses, pushing himself as far as his strength allowed. Maybe one day he could stand side by side with Mina. At that moment, a massive flash of light appeared over the main kaiju battlefield. The fight had begun there. Mina stood atop a building, aiming at the distant main monster. She remembered the promise she made with Kafka. Looking at Kafka standing far away, she immediately unleashed her full power. With one shot, the giant kaiju's stomach vanished. Mina had used 96% of her strength. As soon as the first shot ended, she loaded the second cannon and fired a beam at the kaiju's head. The powerful strike erased the mushroom kaiju's head, and its body crashed to the ground. Still, Mina fired a third cannon, slicing half of the mushroom kaiju's body away. At this point, the base detected no life signs from the kaiju, but Mina fired another laser beam, completely obliterating what remained. Then the vice captain approached Kafka and told him, standing beside Mina meant possessing power like hers. Angrily, Kafka asked, "Vice Captain, can you display such amazing power too?" Soshiro clearly replied that he couldn't. Against Mina's powerful sniper weapon, he was nothing. However, at captain level, he could slice small to medium kaiju into pieces in the blink of an eye. In truth, Soshiro's family had fought kaiju for generations, and his long sword was their family's special weapon. Meanwhile, Mina's fifth shot ended, and Soshiro said the real main event was about to begin. Kafka asked in surprise, "Isn't the main monster already dead? So what was Soshiro's main event?" After Soshiro explained, Kafka understood why Mina had kept firing continuously. Creatures like this, after dying, released countless smaller kaiju from their bodies. Mina's relentless barrage was both to impress Kafka and to prevent the kaiju from escaping the battlefield. Kafka's rookie comrades were stunned to hear this. Soshiro also understood that this was extremely tough for a first mission, but those who survived this challenge would definitely see their abilities skyrocket. Currently, most Defense Force members had combat power between 20% and 30%, and most would stay around that level. Only a few could break past it. Among the newcomers, only Shinomiya had already surpassed that level. Soshiro also saw captain potential in another boy, Kafka's friend, Reno. The red-haired guy was watching from the side. He had 5 years of training and was slightly ahead in combat power, but Reno's performance was far superior. Before he could think further, they received orders through their headsets to head to another sector. But halfway there, they suddenly spotted a man in a cleanup company uniform sitting next to a kaiju corpse, talking to himself. Then the man said, "Is there any professional kaiju doctor around here?" This man was a humanoid kaiju. When kaiju number 9 began to transform, both of them recognized him. It was the same humanoid kaiju who had been in the exam hall earlier. It was this one who had injured Shinomiya. Although the whereabouts of both boys had been tracked, kaiju number 9 captured them because he wanted to use them for human experiments. Reno quickly called for help, but no response came to the message he sent. In reality, this was kaiju number 9 9's trap. He had enveloped the surrounding area in a titanium space, which could hide the location and block all communication. Kaiju number 9 felt something was off. His kaiju form's precision needed to increase further, yet he still couldn't land a hit on Reno. On the other side, the red boy kept running while thinking about the current fight. Their strengths weren't equal. How was Reno able to predict Kaiju's attacks? This made him recall what Vice Captain Soshiro Hoshino had said. Every person has a limit to their power. Only a few can surpass about 20% to 30% of it. Though everyone has the potential to break their limits, no matter how hard the red boy tried, his power always stayed at 20%. This situation had been going on for 2 weeks, ever since Captain Mina saved him. Since then, he had been desperately trying to become stronger. In Kaiju number 9's eyes, Reno wanted to save the red-haired boy and escape, but it was completely futile. Without his permission, neither object nor living being could leave that place. Hearing this, the red boy was forced to fight. The only way for them to survive was to kill this kaiju together. Due to serious injuries, the red boy could only cover Reno from Kaiju's attacks. Soshiro realized that the red boy and Reno had gone missing. The team leader couldn't contact them, and their life signs weren't registering either. Kaiju number 9 didn't kill Reno immediately. Instead, he controlled his power to slowly torture him. Seeing his comrade continuously getting hurt, the red boy crawled toward a gun lying on the ground. He refused to accept this. At that moment, only one thought filled the red boy's mind. Whether it's a god or a devil, just save Reno. It felt as if God had heard his plea. Kafka transformed into his kaiju form and, with a single punch, tore off Kaiju number 9's head. Reno was saved, but the situation he always wanted to avoid had happened anyway. He had worked so hard to become strong so that Kafka wouldn't have to transform, but in the end, he still had to rely on Kafka. At that moment, Kafka advanced toward Kaiju number 9. Though Reno knew Kafka was powerful, he still had a bad premonition. After all, Kaiju number 9 wasn't weak either. However, fighting or not wasn't the main issue. Kaiju number 9 was surprised. Kafka knew he couldn't stay for long, so he quickly dug a tunnel to escape. Though he couldn't kill Kaiju number 9, he had saved both examinees. But as he searched for a place to revert to human form, Kafka never imagined that the cheerful vice captain's combat ability was 92%, capable of moving at high speed and fighting with his ordinary body. However, even when attacked, Kafka couldn't use too much strength or else his kaiju power might harm Soshiro. But when he was worried about him, the vice captain started attacking him instead. Kafka was cut by Soshiro's blade, and after a successful strike, the vice captain attacked again. His attack was so fast that Kafka couldn't even defend with his body. This wasn't just the second area, it was activity beyond human capability. Thinking this, Kafka nearly suffered a fatal injury. He felt he had survived, but the flesh on his left chest had been sliced open, and his exposed core was seen by the vice captain. Although he could recover quickly with his strong regeneration, it consumed a lot of energy. If he took more cuts, his situation would be counterattacked. But surprisingly, instead of attacking, he took advantage of the rising dust and fled. By the time Soshiro reacted, Kaiju number 8 had vanished without a trace. On the other side, Shinomiya Kikoru had just finished the battle and was sitting sadly on the monster's corpse. She was worried about Kafka's safety, but didn't know whether to trust him or not. At that moment, Kafka, who had escaped from the vice captain, finally returned. Although Shinomiya was very concerned, technology is very advanced. Reno and Redhead shouldn't have any major issues. On the contrary, you should worry more about your own safety. If Vice Captain Soshiro has caught any clue, it will be very bad. As is that when it appeared, it didn't kill anyone. Last time it appeared, it saved 2 slave girls. It seems it isn't a monster that kills every human it sees. Even in this battle, number 8 didn't attack me, which surprised me. During the fight, Soshiro felt something was off. Number 8's reactions and movements weren't just different from normal monsters. They were human-like. At that moment, Mina interrupted his thoughts and said that no matter what kind of kaiju number 8 is, when you see it, you'll decide to kill it immediately. At the same time, both received important information. Before attacking Reno and Redhead, Kaiju number 9 had revealed its human form. This means the Defense Force can now identify Kaiju number 9 from images. On the other hand, on the road, because of a foolish person standing there, a man with glasses got out of his car and yelled at him to move, but the other remained unmoved. He slowly passed by, then transformed into a monster and swallowed him. This was Kaiju number 9, the one that looked human on the outside but was a kaiju on the inside. From a radio broadcast, it learned that the Defense Force had been searching for it for a long time. So for safety, it decided to hide for a while. At the same time, in the ward, the injured Reno finally woke up. Kafka and Shinomiya were sitting by his side, so Reno expressed his gratitude to both for saving him. Because of Kafka, he and Redhead were able to survive. But Reno didn't know that Redhead was lying on the bed next to him. Naturally, he didn't know that Kafka was Kaiju number 8, so it was strange. Why was Reno thanking Kafka? Seeing this, Shinomiya cleverly lied that Kafka had discovered the weak point of the mushroom monster, which helped the Defense Force eliminate the monster group. group. Then the conversation turned to Kaiju number 8. Redhead was very grateful for being saved by Kaiju number 8. He felt that Kaiju number 8 was pretty cool. Hearing his own praise, Kafka got embarrassed. After Reno and Redhead recovered, the Defense Force celebrated the success of the first mission, and their restaurant served high-quality beef. It turned out that the green-haired Azuma was the owner of Azumo Tech Company, which made the Defense Force's uniforms. Under the vice captain's lead, everyone started eating, and the atmosphere became lively. Soon, everyone felt completely relaxed. Although they were making noise, unconsciously they started talking about mission-related things. After the first mission, everyone realized their shortcomings. Amid the laughter and jokes, the vice captain announced good news. Because Kafka discovered the mushroom monster's weakness and reduced the Defense Force's losses, the higher-ups decided to make him a full member of the team. In this way, after one night, Kafka came to the captain's office and officially joined the team under Mina's appointment. As he was about to leave, Mina reminded him late as usual. But on his way back to the hostel, he saw that the training room light was still on. So he went to check and was stunned by the scene in front of him. The vice captain was to kill Kaiju number 8. Kafka was very scared and also realized that the vice captain was extremely powerful. The ones he wanted to protect weren't just ordinary people, but also the members of the Defense Force under him. Seeing him work so hard, Kafka also expressed his desire to become stronger. He also showed that he wanted to become the strongest member of the Defense Force. This was the secret behind the vice captain's great power. Seeing his strength, Kafka showed his firm determination to become strong too. But in the sky over the leader, it launched an attack on the Defense Force base like a meteor, accompanied by dozens of wyvern-type kaiju from an alien dragon army. In an instant, the base was engulfed in a sea of flames. Towering pillars of fire reaching the sky jolted the Defense Force members awake from their sleep. Captain Mina was not at the base, so Vice Captain Hoshina immediately took command and ordered all teams to prepare for battle. But at that moment, the intelligence department discovered that all these wyverns, dragons, were around fortitude level 6.5, meaning every invading kaiju was at the Hanju main/leader class level. Kafka, who was familiar with kaiju behavior, immediately sensed something was wrong. Kaiju of this level always operated alone. They had never been seen working in a coordinated pack like this before. After hearing Kafka's report, Hoshina quickly realized that there must be an even more powerful kaiju controlling them, and this kaiju was highly intelligent, which explained how they could carry out such a planned assault. While they were discussing this, Kaiju number 10 suddenly emerged from the smoke. This time, the intelligence department calculated its level, 8.3. It was a full Daikaiju class giant. Hoshina immediately ordered the rest of the members to fight the wyverns and protect nearby civilians. But before he could even finish speaking, Kaiju number 10 fired a laser beam. Hoshina dodged it with lightning speed. With every missed attack, number 10 grew more serious. Then it opened the eye on its forehead and commanded all the wyverns to attack. The roars of the dragons echoed from all directions, filling Hoshina with worry. Most of the people here were rookies. The main senior members weren't at the base. There was no time to think. Another punch from number 10 came flying. Hoshina had to focus entirely on fighting it. After several exchanges, Hoshina realized that Kaiju number 10's skin was even tougher than that of an 8-class kaiju. His attacks couldn't break through its defense. The same was true for the other members' attacks on the wyverns. But Kafka knew the common weakness of these wyvern-type kaiju. To reduce weight for flight, their back skin is thin and their core is hidden on the back. While flying, they take more damage from below and the front, so their frontal armor is extremely strong. Hearing Kafka's explanation, the team split into two groups. One group distracted a wyvern to draw its attention, while the other attacked from behind. But just as Iharu Furuhashi, the green-haired one, was about to succeed, they forgot that these monsters could also coordinate as a team. Seeing the kaiju cooperating shocked everyone. At that moment, Shinomiya Kikoru charged in with incredible speed and attacked the enemy. Kikoru was so powerful because after the previous mission, both captains had created a special weapon just for her, so she could become the 3rd Division's 3rd main powerhouse. This massive axe made from kaiju parts possessed special power that could turn her into the 3rd key strength of the 3rd Division. By pulling the trigger, a shockwave was generated behind the giant axe, accelerating it dramatically. Of course, when the shockwave erupted from the front, the attack's power also increased tremendously. But Kikoru didn't even get a chance to celebrate. Suddenly, a pteranodon-type kaiju pterosaur sneaked up from behind. Fortunately, some freeze bombs were fired just in time, freezing the pteranodon's wings and causing it to crash to the ground. That was Reno's doing. Impressed by Reno's strength, Kikoru decided to team up with him to defeat the enemies. On the other side, while fighting Kaiju number 10, Hoshina realized it was extraordinarily powerful. From its fighting style, it seemed it wasn't here to kill, but to enjoy the battle for fun, which was completely unlike normal kaiju behavior. From the previous clashes, Hoshina had noticed cracks in number 10's tough skin despite its durability, so he deliberately lured it into the training ground. In this place, Hoshina no longer needed to worry as much. Meanwhile, another pteranodon was about to attack a Defense Force member. Without hesitation, Kafka transformed his legs and, in a flash, rescued the injured female member. She looked at Kafka in complete shock. Kafka remembered he had only released 1% of his power. Just as he was about to explain, the Pteranodon attacked them again from behind. Luckily, Kikaru arrived in time and took it down in a single strike, saving both of them. Reno warned Kafka not to panic. Now that he was an official member, if his identity was exposed, he would be killed. At this point, the Defense Force was fighting with everything they had. When Hoshina struck Kaiju number 10 again, he was stunned the next moment. Despite being slashed like that, number 10 still stood firm, and the wound healed in an instant. Still, Hoshina wasn't afraid. If one strike didn't kill it, he'd strike again. At the same time, Kafka also sensed an overwhelming surge of energy. When number 10 was cut into pieces, its body began to swell, releasing extremely hot steam. Hoshina was forced to retreat. The analysis department also reported that number 10's power was continuously increasing. Its size had become enormous. Everyone was stunned at the sight. In that very moment, Mina blew off one of its arms and successfully rescued Hoshiro. Then Mina also blasted off the Kaiju's second arm. But Kaiju number 10's regeneration ability was extremely fast. Within just a few seconds, it had fully recovered again. The command room informed them that the Kaiju's core was located near the 4th to 6th rib bones in its chest area, and the remaining 2 laser beams had to be used very carefully. Upon hearing this, Hoshiro immediately took action. He attacked the Kaiju's legs, trying to slow its movement so Mina could aim better. But when he struck, Hoshiro realized his attacks simply weren't strong enough. At that moment, Shinomiya came running at full speed. She raised her axe and leaped toward Kaiju number 10. But right then, Hoshiro stopped her and told her to attack the monster's armor together with him. Saying this, Hoshiro dashed forward at high speed. His attacks could break through the Kaiju's shell, but couldn't inflict real damage. On the other hand, Shinomiya's attacks could deal damage, but couldn't break the shell. By combining their efforts, they finally managed to halt Kaiju number 10's movement, though both of them were now completely exhausted. At that exact instant, Mina found the perfect spot. Seeing the Kaiju unable to move, she fired a laser beam at its back, completely exposing the core. She reloaded immediately, pushed her power output to 96%, carefully aimed once more, and this time completely destroyed Kaiju number 10 with a precise shot. After its death, everyone erupted in cheers of joy. Even Kafka was deeply impressed. This was exactly the kind of defense force he wanted to join, one where everyone protected each other. But right then, a massive sphere formed in the sky. All the winged pterosaur-like monsters began flying into it, sacrificing their lives. Analysis from the command room revealed that if that sphere exploded, it would release energy equivalent to 20,000 tons of TNT. In other words, the power of a nuclear bomb. No one had expected that after Kaiju number 10 was killed, all the remaining pterosaurs would merge into one gigantic bomb with nuclear-level destructive power. Once it detonated, the entire city would be wiped out in an instant. Seeing his comrades and the city in mortal danger, Kafka sprinted forward without hesitation and revealed his Kaiju identity in front of everyone. Hoshiro's eyes widened even more in shock upon seeing him. He was so captivated that he momentarily lost his usual vigilance. Everyone was stunned by Kafka's transformed appearance. Kafka pushed his Kaiju power to full mode and shot into the sky faster than lightning. With all his strength, he delivered a powerful punch and shattered the monster sphere high in the atmosphere. Mina immediately ordered all members to get down and drop their shields to minimize damage. The monster sphere exploded in midair. Even after landing back on the ground, Kafka didn't stop. He stood at the very front and used his power to shield all the team members from the blast wave. When the dust finally settled, Mina was forced to face reality. As captain of the Defense Force, her duty was clear. No Kaiju must be allowed to survive. In that moment, Captain Mina raised her gun and pointed it directly at him. Kafka's identity as Kaiju number 8 was exposed, and he was immediately sentenced to execution by hanging. At that moment, the Defense Force headquarters urgently convened an emergency meeting to discuss how to deal with this major Kaiju number 8. A one-eyed officer suggested handling it secretly like Kaiju number 9 without making it public. The bald man argued that it should be killed outright, keeping only the useful organs to turn into weapons. In the end, Shinomiya's father, Isao, said that Kafka should be brought to headquarters for inspection before any decision is made. The members of the 3rd Division considered Kafka their comrade, but Kafka himself had no idea until he was being transported in an unmonitored prison van. At that point, Mina told him, "Back then, you transformed without hesitation to save everyone. Though it shocked us all, no one in the 3rd Division ever saw you as a monster." Meanwhile, everyone was gathering evidence to prove Kafka's humanity. On the other hand, the escort team members saluted the van as it passed. They were grateful in that moment and respected Kafka. 2.5 days later, Kafka was brought to the coastal facility at headquarters, where he was held behind more than 30 layers of steel security gates. At this time, Kafka had no clue what his fate would be. While Kafka was imprisoned, the 3rd Division members didn't sit idly by. They were all thinking of ways to help him. As an officer, Mina gathered strong evidence in Kafka's favor and immediately ordered its sent to headquarters. Kikoru Shinomiya also ran to her father, pleading with him to cancel Kafka's punishment, as Kafka, Kaiju No. 8, had saved her life. But in response to his daughter's plea, the father bluntly called her a fool. Right after, he handed her a report explaining that what looked like a heart in the left side of his chest was actually a kaiju core. That man is not human. He's the very monster that killed your mother. Mina gathered the trustworthy members of the 3rd Division and had them reassigned to different teams. The first reason was that this monster had caused massive destruction, reducing the base to only 20% capacity, which couldn't be restored quickly. The second reason was that with Kaiju No. 9 appearing, Defense Headquarters anticipated intelligent kaiju showing up everywhere, so they were dispersing skilled members across various teams. Meanwhile, Kafka remained in captivity for many days, undergoing all kinds of tests every day. But he didn't resist. He was determined to prove himself human for the sake of his comrades. This situation didn't change for 2.5 days until the supreme leader of the Defense Force, Izo himself, arrived. The moment he got there, he ordered his men to remove Kafka's restraints, saying that if Kafka were truly a major kaiju, these bonds wouldn't hold him anyway. As soon as Kafka was freed, Isao declared that a real contest would be better and immediately fired a laser at him. For a moment, Kafka froze. He barely had time to think. The leader closed in again. When questioned, Kafka insisted he wasn't a monster, but the leader wasn't satisfied and refused to accept it. Now he would officially eliminate Kafka. Kafka wanted to resist, but the leader was dead serious. With full power, one punch nearly killed Kafka and shattered his arm. Every subsequent move was lethal. Kafka had no time to react. He was getting pummeled like a kaiju. Unconsciously, he partially transformed into his kaiju form. The leader's attacks were like mountains. Kafka was helpless. Even at full speed, he couldn't dodge the deadly blows. But after the transformation, he felt the kaiju's breath, which calmed him. Kafka couldn't understand it, but the team explained that the leader's combat suit was made from Kaiju No. 2. He was the only human capable of controlling a major kaiju. In other words, Kafka was fighting a terrifying humanoid monster. Kafka didn't rush in, but his hesitation cost him his legs. He took a solid punch from the leader, too. Fortunately, thanks to his kaiju power, he didn't suffer major injuries. He could endure the blows, but now Kafka himself was acting strange. In the next moment, he let out a powerful roar that shocked everyone. Kafka himself was stunned. He had lost control of his body. His consciousness was trapped inside. Then he saw the kaiju parasite again. It had taken over his body. From the outside, the kaiju form became violent and began fighting the leader uncontrollably. Kafka's kaiju body had completely lost its mind. No matter how strong the leader was in history, under the unconscious rage of Kaiju No. 8, everyone would be crushed. However, during the fight, the leader managed to block his attack. But you can't deal with an unconscious kaiju using normal thinking. Kaiju No. 8 had turned into a machine of suicidal punches. Because of this, the leader was completely at a disadvantage. If he didn't have the shield of Kaiju No. 2 in front of those stormy attacks, perhaps Isao wouldn't be alive right now. Thinking this, when the leader got a chance to fight, he immediately unleashed all his strength to use Kaiju No. 2's final move, but this move proved ineffective. His plan to destroy Kaiju No. 8's core failed. After that, he faced the most terrifying form of monster No. 8. The power of the clash between these two humanoid monsters far exceeded the limits of the base. Even the walls capable of withstanding a level 10 kaiju's impact were slowly crumbling under the collision of both monsters. But the vice captain couldn't understand why the leader could have killed Kafka while he was still human. So why bring him to this monster-like state? Hearing this, Shinomiya felt that her father's intention wasn't to kill Kafka from the beginning to the end. It was just a test. If Kafka could retain his sanity even in extreme situations, then the Defense Force wouldn't let go of such a top fighter. But while she was understanding this, the situation on the battlefield completely turned around. Monster No. 8's strength turned out to be far beyond expectations. It felt like her father had made a mistake in facing Kaiju No. 8. Both Kafka and the leader were exhausted. Kafka tried to stop his body, but he couldn't do it at all. And as Kaiju No. 8 grew stronger and stronger, on the other side, the leader's power was gradually weakening. Then, after taking another punch from Kaiju No. 8, he was already on his last breath. So now, without hesitation, he forcibly drew out his remaining battle power. This time, he even summoned the Maya of Kaiju No. 2. But Kaiju No. 8's power had become so immense and ferocious that none of the leader's attacks worked on it anymore. Then Kaiju No. 8 grabbed the leader, pinned him down, and slammed him hard onto the ground. The situation had become extremely critical. The leader, who had never lost before, was crushed in an instant by Kaiju No. 8. Seeing this, Shinomiya was on the verge of breaking down. But even now, she still firmly believed in Kafka. She shouted loudly to bring Kafka back to his senses, and feeling the trust of her comrades, Kafka completely exploded. He tried to break free, but seeing the scene in front of him, he was stunned. The monster had mercilessly swallowed him in one go. It seemed like everything was over. Seeing the mad black shadow of Monster No. 8, the leader had given up all hope, and just as Kafka's consciousness was about to disappear, suddenly a gentle hand grabbed him. Thinking Seeing that Mina was still waiting shoulder to shoulder to fight with him, an infinite willpower surged in his heart. In the warmth of friendship, he decisively shattered his own monster core. Kaiju number 8's most lethal punch landed on his body. Kafka told the leader, "I'm not a monster, I'm a human." At that moment, the entire audience fell silent. After saying this, Kafka could no longer hold on and collapsed. At the same time, the old leader truly believed in Kafka and ordered everyone else to stand down. In fact, he had already arranged backup. The captain of the first unit was ready to protect them. Although this test had its ups and downs, fortunately, Kafka passed the exam. After sending Kafka for treatment, a meeting was immediately called at headquarters. Mina defended Kafka with all her strength. Although she had no authority there, she still wanted to ensure Kafka's safety. She had always thought about Kafka in her heart. Emotionally, she couldn't let go of Kafka. In reality, Kafka had also saved the 3rd Defense Team. She didn't believe Kafka was a monster. At this time, the old leader rejected the proposal to turn Kaiju number 8 into a weapon and acknowledged that Kafka was trustworthy. Finding the right person to turn into a weapon isn't always possible. Right now, they don't have enough people to fight the Kaiju, so there's no harm in accepting Kafka. At that moment, in the medical room, Kafka heard Mina crying. This scene broke his heart, but when he woke up, he saw the stern face of the old leader in front of him, which almost scared him. Kafka was alive, and he hadn't killed the old leader. Thinking this, Kafka calmed down, and the next moment he became extremely happy. The captain pointed to his heart, which was as weak as an ordinary person's. But he was still a kaiju. Currently, most people were opposing Kafka's existence. However, the leader had temporarily suppressed them. But he had one condition. Kafka must prove his worth. Feeling the captain's seriousness, Kafka swore to the Defense Force that he would make them accept him. At the same time, somewhere in the city, the evolved Kaiju number 9 appeared again. It was hiding and keeping an eye on the entire city. And this is where the story of Kaiju number 8's first season ends. So guys, like and subscribe to the video quickly to watch season 2. See you in the next season.